So what Europe does with itself, how does Europe relate to others, is very important. So this, in that context for us, when we looked at all the big polls, I think the one which was most under-realized was our relationship with Europe. And within Europe, in fact, in many ways, our relationship with Germany. And if I were to say what has changed in the recent past, we've had really two big back-to-back events in India. The visit of Chancellor Merz. I think it was his first visit to Asia. Yeah. And then the India-Europe FTA, which President von der Leyen described as the mother of all deals. So I think the two of them actually are creating a new landscape between us. And we hope to take it forward. But I would just add one last point that, the relationships don't happen just by visits and agreements and headline news or even discussions here. They need a lot of comfort building. At different levels in the systems, people need to know each other, call each other, discuss with each other, throw ideas at each other. And we need India and Europe and India and Germany to work to build that level of comfort, which I think is eminently feasible. And that's really what I see as the task before us.
Do you think that if, Minister Vadeful, do you think that 2-3 years ago, you would not have had such a deepening relationship with India? And to what extent is this relationship part of the way that you are thinking about China?
No, to be honest, 2 or 3 years ago, I wouldn't have expected that we would come to that very level of cooperation between us and between the European Union and India as well. As Jaish correctly said, we're just building up a new center of sovereignty here in Europe. And of course, he referred to the shocks we had in the last years. And of course, the last one was only Greenland. Before that, of course, the Russian war of aggression and so on and so on. We all remember that. And the conclusion from our side was that really we have to bring Europe to a new level in the decision-making process, to come to a qualified majority voting, to be really able to act when it comes to foreign policy, and also with regard to our enlargement process. The Chancellor just yesterday answered to a question from the Western Balkans that we are very open to the enlargement process. We are not only looking to the Western Balkans, but perhaps also to other countries, not only in the East, but also perhaps in the North. So, and India, of course, was always, I would say, on our radar, but it was, we oversaw sometimes the opportunities which are laying ahead. And when we realized that, I think we made steps forward. And we know each other for some times, not only we personally, but also our governments. And this is a longer line, which also former governments in Germany took. And for that very reason, there was a common ground. And I would like to quote my friend Jaish with a very important sentence, which makes perhaps clear. And he said, quote unquote, "Predictability today carries a huge premium in global politics." And this is so true. And I think perhaps it needed these shocks that we were aware that we know where India is and that you are predictable and that we trust you, and vice versa perhaps. And so this initiated what happened. And this, of course, makes a categorical difference to China. We are both democracies. We have freedom of speech. We have rule of law. And that, of course, means really a lot for us. And so India is a very different partner to us compared to China.
Mr. Jaishankar, when one of your themes has been strategic autonomy. Following the recent agreement with the US, the trade agreement, where you are now forced to wean India off of Russian oil, does that not impact your strategic autonomy? Because that's how you were explaining it in the past.
No, look, I think, one, we are very much wedded to strategic autonomy because it's very much a part of our history and our evolution. And it's.
But can you exercise this strategic autonomy today as much as you want?
No, well, we do, and we've always done. I think it's something which is very deep, and it's something which cuts across the political spectrum as well. Where the energy issues are concerned, look, this is today a complex market. I think oil companies in India, as in Europe, as probably in other parts of the world, look at availability, look at costs, look at risks, and take the decisions that they feel is in the best interest. So I would say, and we have a position which on that. So I don't want to rehash the polemics of that. I think that phase has passed. Today, when coming to Munich, very honestly, I'm kind of coming here in the afterglow of an India-EU FTA and a very successful visit of Chancellor Merz. So I would rather, look, we are not in 22, we are not in 23, we are not even in 25. So many things are changing, and so many of us are doing our calculations and recalculations. It's important for us to say, what are the touch points, what are the common grounds, where is it we can strengthen each other? We would not, we talk to each other quite often. We would not necessarily agree on everything, but I do believe that by doing that, and if there is an inclination to find common ground and overlaps, that would happen. But if the bottom line of your question is, would I remain independent-minded and make my decisions, and would I make choices which sometimes may not agree with your thinking or his thinking or somebody else's thinking out there? Yes, it can happen.
This is a question for both of you. Is this new world order that's emerging one in which there are coalitions that get formed for specific issues, whether sometimes it works for trade, sometimes, and this is the sort of the Mark Carney view of the future?
I would say yes. Coalition is perhaps a good phrase, not alliances, but specific coalitions, and of course that includes this is not only for one sector. You cannot have a coalition only orientated perhaps on the economic sector if you have not a common understanding, a basic understanding on other sectors as well. So we are also cooperating on the defense sector very closely. We are cooperating when it comes to build resilience against climate change. We are cooperating when it comes to defending democracies and all these international rules-based standards and so on. So this is, I would say, a new world, a good new world is ahead, is achievable. Of course, we have to strengthen our efforts. The EU has to be to become capable to be effective on the world stage. We're working on that, as I just said. But for Germany, it's absolutely clear that we are looking beyond Europe, and not only over the Atlantic Ocean to the west. Where are our partners? Where are possible partners on other continents? And we are finding them. This is the fortunate situation we're in.
This has often been India's strategy.
Yes. I obviously, like most of us in the room, followed Prime Minister Carney's speech in Davos with a lot of attention. But bear in mind, Carney is speaking as the Prime Minister of an alliance country, of a treaty partner. And for a treaty partner, in a way, this is new ground that he's breaking. Whereas for a country like India, which never went into that kind of, treaty-based relationships or alliances, we've been in that frame of mind for a long time. I mean, that is part of the strategic autonomy thinking, belief that I spoke to you about. So if you look at it, we have Quad, which is with the US, Japan, Australia, very important in the Indo-Pacific. We've had BRICS, originally with Brazil, Russia, China, then South Africa, now 5 more are added on. We have a number, if I actually count them, I think we have probably more than 20 of these trilateral or more than trilateral combinations. In fact, we just did one with Canada, with Mr. Carney, India, Australia, and Canada.
You're deepening your relationship with Brazil as well, aren't you?
Yes, indeed. We have one with India, Brazil, South Africa. So we are as 3 developing democratic countries. So for us, this kind of coalition or working groups, call it what you would, but essentially an effective, practical, agenda-based coming together of countries on a regular basis. This has been very much the hallmark of Indian diplomacy now for about 2 decades.
I'm going to open it up for a question after this one for Minister Vadeful. What do you think of a world made up of spheres of influence? And what is your sphere?
Yeah, of course, our sphere is of course Europe, but I have to realize that there are powers who are trying to have that spheres of influence, and of course, in a way, we have to build up resilience in Europe against that. So that is a very good reason for us to look for these partners. And like India does have a lot of partners, so do we, as Europeans, as Germans, with a long-lasting relationship with Japan, a big friendship. I was just in Australia and New Zealand and visited Singapore and the Pacific Islands. I will spend my next longer visit to Latin America, so being in Brazil, Argentina, perhaps also Chile. So we have a lot of partners, and of course I would have to mention the African continent as well. But I think the new thing is, some years ago, and that was one of the first questions you raised here correctly, was, did you expect that very development? And I answered no, because some years ago we firstly considered these countries as being members of the BRICS, and that is in a sort of alienated us from them, and that was wrong. So now we realized that, of course, we have a lot of differences with especially Russia that has not to be underscored here. They are very, very fundamental, and also with China, but we have a lot of things in common with countries like India, like Brazil, and why not focusing on these common interests and common values? So this is, I think, the new view Europe and Germany is putting on the world.
It's very interesting. There was a question over there. Yes, go ahead.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. This is Dalal Erakat from Palestine. I want to touch upon the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, the IMEC, which we did not hear today. It is framed as a platform for connectivity, stability, and shared prosperity. How does India envision IMEC contributing to a regional stability in a way that is inclusive of Palestine and the Palestinian rights and consistent with international law and the two-state solution, so that economic solutions and integration and the trade road competition that brings also Europe and Germany to the board do not proceed alongside political exclusion of the Palestinian rights? Thank you.
Well, we have a long-standing position on Palestine, which you're familiar with. And when we embarked with a set of partners of the IMEC, the purpose of the IMEC is really to address connectivity, logistics issues, and improve the economy. So I would be careful sort of mixing up the two issues. The purpose of the IMEC is not to solve the Palestinian issue or to somewhere contribute or strengthen or so I do think each of those issues is important, but I would not take one as the solution for the other.
Is IMEC progressing? It's something that I think President Trump was quite excited.
Answer is kind of yes, but not at the pace at which people initially expected it to, which is understandable because there was a big conflict going on in the Middle East and everybody's attention was on that conflict. But what I do see, when I come to Europe, especially when I meet people, countries, governments, leaders, businesses from Mediterranean Europe, but not only from Mediterranean Europe, from Germany as well, from France, there's a big European interest in IMEC. There's a big Indian interest in IMEC. We are the two ends of it. Remember, this is the historical trade route of, hundreds, if not thousands of years. So we are trying, yesterday, I think Chancellor Merz used this coming back from a vacation from history. I think when you come back from the vacation, you'll discover IMEC is also part of history which you need to reinvent.
There's another question down there. Yeah.
Brankica Jankovic from Serbia, human rights expert. My question is for Minister Vadufel. You are also well known as credible and reliable leaders, and I.
All right, so that was External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar at the Munich Forum, stressing India's multi-coalitions approach. Jaishankar was speaking on multiple issues, from the Khalistan issue in Canada to the issues of trade. Jaishankar speaking out in Munich, and that is the Munich conference. It is coming in on 6 stories at 6. All right, viewers, we start with the top story that we have lined up for you. The row over tax exemption on disability pensions for the military veterans is in focus as the union budget proposed a change that has, in fact, angered the veterans. For decades, these pensions have been fully exempt from the income tax, whether a soldier was medically discharged from service after a disability on duty or continued in service despite the injury. Now, the government plans to limit the exemption only to those who were invalidated out on medical grounds starting April 2026. Now, veterans say that the move is unfair and discriminatory. Here's more.
For over 100 years, disability pensions for armed forces personnel have been fully exempt from income tax. This practice began in 1922 and continued under the Income Tax Act of 1961. But now, the issue has stoked controversy.
Capital expenditure grants the
In the Union Budget of 2026, the Government of India has proposed amending the Income Tax Act. The change would restrict full tax exemption only to personnel who are discharged on medical grounds due to disability linked to military service. If passed, soldiers who continue serving despite their disability or take early retirement will no longer receive full tax exemption. The proposal has sparked concern among veterans.
If you cut out these concessions, the risk, we don't want a risk-avert army. Today you take a risk for the simple reason that even if my arm is amputed, I will be looked after. But the problem is that the day this doubt comes in the mind of a soldier, he may become risk-averse. Now this is a very serious thing which people who are sitting in the bureaucratic chairs must understand. Because this is something which is not being understood very well.
Over the years, this full tax exemption has applied not only to soldiers who were forced to leave service due to serious injuries, but also to those who continued serving the country despite their disability and later retired as usual.
डिसेबिलिटी पेंशन के ऊपर टैक्स लगाने का निर्णय सरकार का बहुत ही दुखदाई और गलत है, क्योंकि इससे हम दोहरा वॉर कर रहे हैं इंडिया की डिफेंस के ऊपर। एक तरफ तो हम बोलते हैं कि हम अपने कल्चर का बड़ा रिस्पेक्ट करते हैं, लेकिन जो हमारे बुज़ुर्ग इस समय वेटरन्स 80s की उम्र में हैं, उनके ऊपर हम टैक्स लगाकर उनकी इनकम को, उनके सपोर्ट सिस्टम को हिला रहे हैं। और दूसरी तरफ जेनजी जो कि ऐसे ही कोई जुनून नहीं दिखाती है, दिमाग से काम करती है, उनको हम प्रेरणा दे रहे हैं कि देखिए डिसेबल वेटरन्स को हम किस प्रकार रखते हैं, तो वो सैनिक कहाँ से बनेंगे, वो सेना में कहाँ से आएंगे। ये दोहरा वार है भारत की डिफेंस के ऊपर।
Veterans say the move creates two categories of disabled soldiers and unfairly penalizes those who chose serving the country over their disability.
And today, Assam witnessed a historic moment as Prime Minister Narendra Modi landed on the newly inaugurated emergency landing facility on the Moran bypass in Dibrugarh of Assam. The first facility of its kind in the northeast, it came alive with an impressive aerial display of fighter jets, transport aircraft and helicopters, showcasing India's air power. Now, the Moran facility, viewers, is part of a broader national security initiative that comes amid China's growing build-up of infrastructure near the border. It keeps India war-ready on the eastern frontier. In a conflict scenario where primary airfields might be targeted, the ELF, this strip provides the Indian Air Force with essential operational redundancy. Here's more.
History has been scripted in Assam. In a first for Northeast India, Prime Minister Narendra Modi today landed aboard a C-130J Super Hercules on a newly built emergency landing on the Moran bypass in Dibrugarh. This is not just a strip of highway. This is a strategic statement. A 4.2-kilometer lifeline carved into a National Highway 24, built to launch fighters, land heavy transports, and power India's rapid response. Located in Assam's Brahmaputra Valley, the Moran airstrip sits at a critical crossroad. To the east, China. To the southeast, Myanmar. To the southwest, Bangladesh. Strategically positioned with operational depth in the line of actual control, this strip allows India to stage missions securely, yet respond at speed. The roar of engines, the thud of history. As the C-130J Super Hercules kissed the tarmac of Moran bypass, the Northeast entered a new strategic era. This is the region's first highway-based emergency landing facility, engineered not just for aircraft, but for deterrence. Moments after the Prime Minister's landing, the sky turned into a theatre of power. A Sukhoi Su-30 MKI thundered down the highway and lifted off with authority, watched by the Prime Minister, Assam Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sharma and Union Minister Sarbananda Sonowal. A message echoed across the region that the Indian Air Force can operate from anywhere. Then came the Rafale with precision, power, projection. The fighter's takeoff from a public highway underscores India's evolving doctrine of mobility, flexibility, survivability. 16 aircrafts, fighters, transports, helicopters took part in the aerial display. The aircrafts and the forces also performed live demo of rescue operations.